Hey friends, recently I was reading in Genesis the story of Jacob and Esau. If you're familiar with the story of these twin brothers, scripture tells us that their relationship was strained, going as far to say that they wrestled together in their mother's womb. Years later, Jacob tricked Esau into inheriting his brother's birthright. After this, scripture tells us that Esau hated Jacob because their father had given Jacob the blessing. And Esau began to scheme. I will soon be mourning my father's death. Then I will kill my brother Jacob. So in order to save his own life, Jacob ends up fleeing his home. Can you imagine leaving your home, your friends, your father and mother, out of fear of being harmed by your own sibling? But this is not the end of his story. In Genesis 31:3 it says that the Lord tells Jacob, "Return to the land of your father and grandfather, and I will be with you." Imagine the very real thoughts and fears gripping Jacob's mind. What is waiting for me there? Do I want to spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder and waiting for any attack from my own brother? But Jacob obeys the Lord, and he packs up his family and moves back to Canaan. And in anticipation of any anger that is still with Esau, Jacob sends messengers ahead of him to let his brother know that he is returning home. And here's the part of the story where I saw something that I had never noticed before. After delivering the message, the messengers returned back to Jacob and reported, "We met your brother Esau, and he is already on his way to meet you with an army of 400 men." It says that Jacob was terrified of this news. An army of 400 men? Imagine that picture in Jacob's mind. His worst fears seemed to be realized. His brother still harbored hatred towards him and wanted revenge, even after 20 years. So I don't think Jacob overreacted by splitting his family into groups in order to save as many lives as possible. But here's the most important part of this story. Jacob prays to the Lord and reminds God of the promises that were given to Jacob and asked for rescue from his brother. And then in chapter 33 it tells us, Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they both wept. Here's what the Lord showed me in this story. Are there things in my life, in your life, where any negative evidence seems insurmountable? Maybe it's a medical diagnosis, a pile of unpaid bills, a loved one who has abandoned their faith. To Jacob, those 400 men seemed like a pretty clear-cut sign of pain and hardship. But how did he respond? He made practical steps of preparation while waiting, and he prayed to the Lord, ultimately dedicating the problem to him. In our painful seasons where we are waiting for redemption or healing, this is our model. Make practical, wise steps, but give the situation to the Lord in faith, and watch the Lord work his miracles. The thing that Jacob was worried about didn't even end up happening. In verse 15, Esau tells Jacob, "Let me assign some of my men to guide you and protect you." The very thing that terrified Jacob ended up being a method of protection and blessing to him. God is able to work all things for good.